Good morning, and it's nice to see you today. Wherever you're watching us from, I hope you will text us, let us know, and throughout the broadcast, let us know any questions that you might have. We will try to accommodate as many as possible. My name is Deborah Parenti. I'm the publisher of Radio and Television Business Report, and this is the Black Media Symposium. It's a conversation that we are very anxious to get into, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time with a lot of lengthy introductions, but I would like to thank both Adam Jacobson, our editor at RBR+TVBR, also Ed Ryan, who's handling production today and happens to be our editor at Radio Inc., two finer broadcast trade journalists you would never find. I also want to give a big shout out to Triton Digital, who stepped up to the plate to help us present this today. I think it says a lot about them. And I do hope that if you have an opportunity, please give a thank you to Neil Shore and John Rosso at Triton. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce my co-host for this morning, Deon Levingston. Hello, Deon.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm
Deon
good.
is the regional vice president for Radio 1, overseeing a number of markets: Indianapolis, Detroit, St. Louis. He has a career in radio and television that has gone on for over 20 years now. And he has managed some of the most successful urban radio stations, by the way, in the country, including New York's WQHT, WBLS, and WLIB. He serves on the board of the National Association of Broadcasters, a number of state and civic organizations. And over the years, I'm thrilled to say he has been named by Radio Inc. as one of the best major market managers in the country, also one of the most influential African Americans in radio. And it also, his honors go beyond that. He's been recognized as one of the 40 under 40 high achievers by Network Journal magazine. So without further ado, welcome, Deon. Thank you.
Welcome. I'm looking forward to getting into this.
Great. We're going to kick off right away with our keynote interview. We have two fabulously successful and very well recognized journalists joining us today. I'm going to introduce the first one, Ed Gordon, who is an Emmy award-winning broadcaster who has interviewed many newsmakers, including President Clinton, Academy Award winners Denzel Washington, Jamie Foxx, Haley Berry, the Nation of Islam leader, Minister Louis Farrakhan, actor, I can't read this here, Idris Elba, and the late musician Michael Jackson, among many others. He has covered many of the world's most defining events throughout his career, from the historic 2008 U.S. presidential election to the freedom of South Africa's Nelson Mandela, to the beating of Rodney King, to the upheavals in Haiti and Cuba. You've done a lot, in these years. In 2020, he also authored his first book, Conversation in Black. It's a bestseller, and he has received numerous Emmys for his work, as well as other awards recognizing his talent and professionalism, including the NAACP Image Award and the prestigious Journalist of the Year Award from the National Association of Black Journalists. Welcome, Ed. Nice to have you here.
Thanks.
And sorry, Idris Elba, for messing up the name. I'm blind spot in my eye there. Deon, you want to introduce our other keynote interview?
Oh, no, I actually thought you were doing them both.
Oh, well, okay. Well,
I'm looking at you.
Tells you how rehearsed we are. Roland Martin has been named one of the 150 most influential African Americans in the United States. He 4 times, by the way, by Ebony magazine. His career has included interviews with multiple U.S. presidents, top athletes, and entertainers. He has been honored with more than 30 awards for journalistic excellence, including being named the Journalist of the Year in 2013 by the National Association of Black Journalists for his extensive focus on voter suppression and other issues of concerns to African Americans during the 2012 election. Martin has spent 6 years as a contributor for CNN, appearing on numerous shows and earning accolades nearly just about everywhere. for his no-holds-bar honesty, conviction, and perspective on various issues. He is also an author with 3 best-selling books, is a 4-time NAACP Image Award winner, and recently signed on as a contributor to the iHeartMedia's newly launched Black Information Network. Welcome, Roland, and love your shirt.
Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. So without further ado, we'd like to get right into it. Deon, I would like you to start with a couple of, maybe open some questions and everything.
Yeah, my first question is, we've heard all of this focus now on the African American audience or the Black audience, and all these stories in media jump up on the African American or the Black audience. How do we know that there is true substance there and it's not being done simply because it's the flavor of the day?
Well, Ed, you just turned 60, so I'll defer to age first.
I thank you for that, young man. I thank you for that. You know, Roland and I have talked about this far before all of this came about. The idea of how African Americans are looked at and viewed in journalism. I don't know, and we won't know until history proves out whether this is trendy, a trend, or whether this is a real sea change. I tend to believe that right now we should not be hoodwinked into believing that this is a real change in substance, and the idea that all of a sudden, after the horrendous murder of George Floyd, that people's minds changed after decades and decades. I think right now we have an opportunity to elevate, quote unquote, Black journalism. But I do not believe by any means that this is a slam dunk at this point.
The response that you're seeing from all of these different folks with their renewed emphasis is no different than what took place after 1968 when the Kerner Commission released their report showing there are 2 Americas, 1 white, 1 Black. They didn't agree on many things. That report, of course, was supposed to examine the cause of the race riots in 1967. And one of the most important things that they said was what took place, the lack of diversity in media. So the first wave of Black journalists in mainstream newsrooms, especially on television, took place after the Kerner Commission report was released in 68. Now, all of a sudden, after the murder of George Floyd, you're seeing all of these different initiatives. And so CNN announces, again, this sort of race unit. And then you have these other outlets. And now folks are running to create all these different things. And that's all fine. But the issue that still comes out is, will Black folks be centered? And what I mean by that is, will we be, exactly what is that particular focus? Is it window dressing? The issue that I still say, because in addition to, of course, my work in media, I'm vice president digital of the National Association of Black Journalists. When you look at what happens, who are the people who are making the decisions? Not the workers, not the sharecroppers, but who are the people who are actually profiting and making the decisions? What do they look like? What does it look like? The fact of the matter is here, in the history of media, you've never had an African American who has been the CEO or the top leader of a major news organization. Not one. The only other position I can think of was when Prince Hare was general manager at CNN, but still Jim Walton was the worldwide CEO. At no network has it ever happened. And so the issue for me is, where is Black owned media? Because we still have to control our narrative and not hope and pray somebody else tells our story the proper way.
So my follow-up question would be that to this, Roland, because we had this discussion years ago in New York that I don't know if you remember, when there was me and then NBC as a GM, and then there was one Black news director at Fox at the time, of every station, radio, TV, everything in New York City, the #1 market in the country. How do you then get teeth into the stories if the editors and general managers, because we need to increase ownership, but where we at right now? How do you get teeth behind those stories if those editors and general managers don't look like the people that they're reporting about? And I throw that out to either one of you.
Well, I mean, that's precisely it. But we have to understand, again, when I say centered, that's where the power dynamic comes in. And that is, Again, who is determining that? I got no problem saying this. After TV One canceled my show News One Now, why did I launch my own digital platform? Because I was not interested in going to work in mainstream media and being 51 and asking some 32-year-old white kid, can I go cover black people? See, that's we got to be honest about that. We're having to ask somebody, can I please go cover black people? And so you're still dealing with that dynamic of who has the ultimate decision on what you cover and how you cover it. Before you get to the how, you got to get them just to say yes to even go cover it.
I think we also have to talk about the reckoning of America. We're asking whites to rethink and relook at what we've been doing, a new narrative, if you will. We also have to talk about those, as Roland already alluded to, few and far between Black-owned media outlets, including those that may not be Black-owned, but quote-unquote Black-run. We have to have a reckoning with them as well. The reality is it's very difficult, no matter where you are, to convince media that serious stories that relate to Black America should be seen, that there's an audience for them. I've worked at both white and Black outlets, and I will tell you, sometimes it's just as difficult to convince a Black outlet to allow you to put up a particular kind of story, because the first thing they tell you is, well, we don't want to see that. They don't want to watch that. We can't get an audience for that. It's the same argument that, the movie industry has had with Black movies selling overseas. They do sell overseas if you send them overseas. We watch CNN and MSNBC disproportionately, but when you try to convince a Black outlet to let us do news in a way we know how, they don't want to do that. So the reckoning has to happen across the board. And
Deon, here's where we're going. Let's just go ahead and just put it out here. We are moving towards a point. If you look at the current trajectory, we are moving towards a point where Black people are going to be asking non-Black people, please, pretty please tell our story. What have we seen in the last 30 years? We have seen the decimation of Ebony and Jet. We've seen essentially news go out the window in Black radio. You've got 10 Black targeted, Black owned cable, one broadcast network. And out of those 10, one has a 1 hour news show a week, which started 2 months ago, and that was Revolt. Now, somebody might say, sure, that's the news, but doesn't the other stuff count? Well, let's talk about that. What are we inundated with, meaning African Americans? We are inundated with award shows, reality shows, old sitcoms, movies, comedy. So what we are being fed is loads and loads of entertainment, but what are we getting in terms of that information? If you look at stats, where Black people get their information from, where white people get their information from, it's a totally different deal. Most African Americans get their information from Black radio. Well, what's the status of Black radio? And even define that. And so we are going up against a situation where our folks are going to be so heavily entertained that they're not going to be getting information that is specific to them. And then if we're not careful, it's going to be too late.
We got a question from the audience right now. They're going to put up there from Elston Butler. What is the FCC doing and it relates, I believe, to this, to increase the 1.5% of African-American owned radio stations in America? We work and we run them, but our ownership record is disappointing. And this kind of plays to exactly what you were saying, because when you control something, the more you control, the more you can assert that control over something.
That ship is gone. Telecommunications Act of 1996 destroyed that. That's gone. We're now, and to be perfectly honest, we're now living in a digital world. So versus the terrestrial world or the linear world with television, the opportunity for us to be able to have a significant presence from now moving forward has to operate in the digital space. First, it's the cost of entry is a lot lower. Two, you can reach far more people as opposed to your traditional outlets as well. And so that's really what I'm sort of looking at. Where are we moving when it comes to the digital piece as opposed to the traditional terrestrial? That's a problem for us. And I think, again, that ship left as the Telecommunications Act was passed, and you say it's down to that. You're not going to see us go to 5 or 10% owning radio. Plus, radio is getting killed because of digital. We better be focused on digital.
Well, Ed wants to jump in there, but Ed said something earlier. I'm gonna jump in there. Ed said something earlier that I agree with. That we have to look at that ownership piece, though, because I do think digital is coming on the forefront and growing. But when you just mentioned it, when you talk about Black people, we get our information from Black radio disproportionately. So we have to talk about how we can work to increase that ownership of Black radio and ownership of Black television. Deon's going to come on here in a couple minutes, and he's one of the few people who even own television stations as an African American. And Ed, you wanted to jump in there and say something.
Let me on that point, though, because I think we can't miss what Roland suggested. I do think those that have ownership in the traditional media outlets, radio, television, want to make sure that that in fact is the case, right? That we continue to look for ownership, and that's important. But I do think what Roland is saying is key. The idea that the shift that we're seeing in how we attain our information is really leaning to the digital. I understand why radio but it is. I mean, we can shake our heads, but the truth of the matter is, particularly with young people, I have, a daughter, all her kids, even when I put the television on, they're right here on that telephone. They're right there on that computer. So we have to make sure that all of our areas are covered. Right. So if you want to continue to own radio stations, I'm all for it. If you want to continue to own television stations, I'm all for it. And the gravitas of being on television is still there. But the truth of the matter is that's dying, whether we want to admit it or not. That's dying.
So Deon is shaking his head, ready to jump in there. Go ahead, Deon.
Thanks for having me. So obviously, I've been in TV for 32 years, and I've been an owner since 2007. I own news stations. I've launched local news in local markets. So I'm familiar with the news game. I also know the intricacies of the media and the distribution system, okay? The number one rated cable network is, guess what?
Fox.
The number 2 rated cable network in America is MSNBC. The number 3 rated cable network is CNN.
Right.
News viewership drives cable viewership. Cable viewership is the only place you can get a consistent network platform. Okay, so the cable system and the MVPDs control the network system. It is driven by 3 news networks, which is driving cable. I think there is a place for another national, not a regional, cable network, news network. Roland Martin, you're 100% right, okay? There has never been a Black or an African American in a CEO spot driving content of a major news network. There are very few executive producers that control the content each day on CNN or MSNBC or Fox that control the message for their program. So, Roland, I 100% agree with you. I don't think it's digital, though. I think to be considered real news and not fake news, okay, you have to be on the big screen. I think you have to be on the big screen because that's where the credibility. That's where the credibility is.
Allow me to easily refute that.
Okay.
There are people who do have this notion that, oh, you're not a real show unless you're on television. I had a show on TV One and Black people said that. I was actually on TV. In fact, what was interesting, a brother told me, he said, man, when you gonna get you a show? I said, I'm on 5 days a week. He said, no, I mean a real show. I said, I'm sorry, what do you mean a real show? He said, I mean like on CNN or MSNBC. And I said, brother, do you realize that when Brian Williams comes to Washington, D.C. to host the NBC Nightly News, he literally sits in the same chair I sit in. The brother didn't even realize that we contracted with NBC News Channel to do the show. Same set, same chair, same camera, same fiber optic. But that was his mentality. He was like, oh my God. So here's what I did. So after the show ended, okay, so now let's just look at the landscape. All right. So if I accept that, then I got to wait on BET, OWN, TV One, Afro, Revolt, Bounce, Aspire, and I'm leaving out a couple. You got BET, Her, Clio on my TV One and BET. I gotta wait for one of them to go, hey, let's do a news show. No,
let's make sure.
And before you go there, can we bring Chesley into this discussion?
Yeah.
So let me.
Because she
hold on. Allow me to add the digital piece.
No. She has a national Black network, and I'd like for her to come in this discussion and talk about that from that perspective.
Well, but here's the deal, Deon. So here's what I did. When I launched the digital show 23 and a half months ago, we went from launch to last month doing 30 million views, growing the YouTube channel from 157,000 to 609,000, and out of the 23 months being in the black for 15 of those 23 months.
Wow,
now we're building. So the point is this here. I totally get that. And guess what? I have the exact same guest as CNN, the exact same guest as MSNBC. In fact, I have even more Black folks during coronavirus put on 80 Black experts. So the point I'm saying is the issue is not the network doesn't give you credibility. Who you are and what you build gives you credibility. And that is really going to be the opportunity. And the cost to do it, the budget that I'm on every year isn't even $1 million. That won't even cut car service at some of these networks.
So Chesley, Deon, before you come in, Chesley, can you come in and comment on this now?
No, I think it's a robust discussion. That's great. I think we're talking about platforms. And so, we're in the content business, and it's really a question of what your content is. And I don't think we want to limit ourselves to any one particular platform. We want all of our talent to be across multi-platform because, look, Black people need news and information however they can get it. Okay. So radio is the most accessible. Digital works, but it doesn't work ubiquitously across all of our country. Black people in rural area still need information. They can't necessarily get download speeds like they're supposed to. But I will say this, ownership is important. And I'm not willing, Roland, to give up on the FCC and suggest that as a medium, again, radio, TV is one of many platforms, and we need them all. So we still have to lobby at the FCC, and we're working on that right now. We still have to be able to grow ownership because radio and TV is a mass medium, and digital has the ability to be more narrowcasted, but we need it all.
Hey, Deon, you wanted to come in?
I want to get to the minority tax certificate, by the way, because that isn't
going to bring that up.
Well, Ed, I think Ed had something to say.
I say this, and I think what Chesley said is important. I think it's important that we make sure that we're covered on all lanes. The idea that there has to be this debate of which is better, digital, radio, television, cable, et cetera, et cetera. No, that shouldn't be. If Deon can own a station and can give the opportunity to put forth the programming that we know is of import to our community, let's do that. If we can work the FCC and get more licenses and get more stations that we had disproportionately more literally 30 years ago than we do today, then we should work on those things. we shouldn't have this fight. But I think it's imperative to understand, because this is where African Americans have fallen down historically, that we need to be forward thinking, because the truth of the matter is, whether we like it or not, Roland talked about me turning 60 this week, the idea of what I'm used to, and that is television, that is radio, that is the idea that, as Roland said, you know, when older people come to me, they say, Ed, we miss you on, you got to be on CNN. We need you on da, 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 da. But I've done so many other things that they don't deem as important, because somehow the validity of them in their minds is not the same. My daughter, who's 26, does not see it that way. She doesn't care if it's on CNN, on her phone, she sees it completely different. She's just intaking the information. It doesn't matter where it comes from. So I think we just have to be mindful of that.
Yeah, let me say a couple of things right quick on the minority tax certificate and ownership of local media. There are a lot of people today fighting behind the scenes to try to increase diversity in broadcast and radio ownership. MMTC, David Honig, Marita Cooley, Jim Winston, Nabob, there's a lot of people. G.K. Butterfield currently has a bill in front of Congress called Expanding Broadcast Ownership Opportunity Act of 2020. That is a derivative of the minority tax certificate that is encouraging the white owner to sell to Black folks or people of color or women. So there are a lot of people that haven't thrown the towel in or waved the white flag on diversifying the media airwaves, and FCC hasn't either. FCC has a committee called the Diversity Committee. I'm on it. I've been on it for the last 6 years, and I'll tell you, they're committed to trying to diversify the airwaves. I know you're shaking your head, Ed, but
those airways, Deon, though, let's be clear. Sure. We've been quote unquote committed to diversify those airways for decades and decades.
And I don't disagree with you. But there was a time in America when we had the minority tax certificate. It worked. It introduced some Black folks into the game. OK, and now we have people in Congress that realize the lack of diversity, and those initiatives are trying to be incorporated again. Making stuff happen in D.C. is a slow putt. Okay, it's very difficult, but rest assured, I've been working on it since 2007, so I know how difficult it is, and I'm not about to throw the towel in. So,
before we go any further, we were originally going to talk to both Roland and Ed, and then go on with the panel, but as things have morphed, and I think this is terrific, and you want to go with the flow, I'd like to bring our other two panelists in so they can be part of the conversation. Karen Slade, who out of Los Angeles, and Omar Thompson from Dallas and everything. Welcome to the conversation right now. We had nice little bios and everything we were going to introduce everybody with, but it looks like we'll skip that. By the way, Chesley Maddox, again, just for a moment here, is the CEO of a Wonder Media company which owns and operates American Urban Radio Networks, as she's been discussing. A television owner, Deon McCoy, out of Indianapolis, he owns several television stations there. Karen Slade is the vice president and general manager of KJLH in Los Angeles, and Omar Thompson has the agency perspective from us. He is an advertising agency executive, the founder of 19 Marketing and Media. His clients include, by the way, other networks, including CBS and ABC. So welcome to this free-ranging discussion that we're having here. We'll move. So,
Deborah, it's Deon. I want to go another way if we can, real quick. I want Omar, since you popped in here, and I'm sure this is going to get everyone going as well. Can you talk from an agency side? Because here's the problem in radio, and I'm going to talk about radio for a second, and urban radio stations, the power ratios. And for everybody that doesn't understand, that is revenue compared to your ratings, has always been notoriously low for urban radio stations. And is that an unconscious bias or a conscious bias? And I throw that to you, and I'm sure everybody else is going to jump in as well.
Right. A great question. Let me backtrack a little bit, just on the last piece of conversation when we were talking about whether how Black people consume media, whether it's through the radio or digital. You know, Black people are not homogenous, and I think there's some truth in what everybody said. And I think, you know, from the agency perspective, we have got to deliver integrated opportunities if we want those dollars to fund these companies. Now, as far as the power ratios, when I talk to people in local radio, they still say that the Black listener is undervalued. You can be number one in the market and still not command the dollars that your station deserves. So I think that's more of an unconscious bias. When you look at the good news is when you look at national buyers, there are a number of advertisers like P&G and Nike and others who are allocating hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, toward the African-American space. So what we have to do, we have to lean in, is whether we're in television, radio, digital, and make sure we get our share of those dollars.
So Karen, you wanted to jump in there. Karen, is it conscious or is it conscious, Karen?
I think it's conscious. I have to say. I've been here a long time, and we have always fought to get advertising dollars. I mean, it's always a battle. Even when we had great numbers, it's a battle. It seems like when the majority owners came in and started doing urban, that's when the money flowed right by us to majority owners. Still to this day, 30 years later, we're still fighting to get ad dollars. So yes, they are making a conscious effort to include the Black consumer. But what platform are they using? They're not using minority owned and operated media or minority owned and operated platforms. To backtrack a little bit, news is relevant. Yes, we are overplaying our entertainment aspects, as Roland mentioned, but there's still a degree of credibility that comes with local media, be it local television or local radio. They know you, they trust you, and they believe in you. So when you provide information, they believe you. You have a credibility, and you can use these additional digital platforms to make it more interactive. So it's not a one-way communication. It's not strictly a broadcast. You are interactive. You're listening. You're giving them a voice. You're giving them platforms on air, online, and then you use all the digital assets to get your content out, to push your content out, and to give them an opportunity to respond.
So Ed, is it conscious or unconscious?
Oh, we know it is conscious. I mean, that's not even a question we have to deal with. I mean, we've seen what America is, right? So this is just a microcosm of America. But what we have to do, I think, is find new narratives. As I said, I've been in this 30 plus years now. The same questions that Omar is dealing with in terms of how to get the true value of a dollar based on people that tune in, the disproportionate spending that we have in some areas, we're still undervalued there.
Right.
This is not new. This is something that's been going on. I go back to the reckoning of Black owned and operated media. We say that news is important to us, but we don't value it in the same way. Again, it goes back to what Roland and I say all the time. If CNN, MSNBC tells you something, Black folk tend to believe it quicker than if we're on BET or TV One. And part of that is BET and TV One and other Black outlets have not allowed us to have the dollars needed to fight the battle in the same way. I've worked both sides of the coin. I've worked at CBS and NBC and BET. And the biggest difference was dollars. Right. Plain and simple. It wasn't that they had so many more brilliant people at white outlets than we did at Black outlets. Contrary to what people think, we can produce and have forever the same kind of quality they can if just given the dollars. And that in the end is, and Roland has suggested finding ways to get around that, and he's done it masterfully, the idea of trying to compete. And I just will wrap this up by saying this, though. Karen, I think you're right. in terms of local media and the one-to-one understanding of, your local news anchor and the like. But I think what Roland said earlier is important too, and it's what I built my career on. You can do it on a national level if people trust in you.
Right.
So Deon. So you asked about the money. First of all, forget it. It's extremely conscious. Let's cut to the chase, okay? Black, white. So at the end of the day, they value white folks more than they value black people. And in fact, even if you talk about cable networks, you can have high black viewership. But even within those networks, they're going to reach a point where they say, OK, we've got enough black people because, frankly, the advertisers does not want to actually give us the money that we need because we have too many black people. Trust me, that conversation has happened inside of a CNN and an MSNBC. It happens. Here's where we are right now. It keeps talking about the reckoning. I use that phrase. I talk about the third reconstruction that we're in. So you see what is happening within the ad agencies, where you had, since the murder of George Floyd, you've had this upheaval where you had black folks, Latinos, and then you have these white allies, or as Jane Elliott calls them, partners, who have been challenging folks internally when it comes to their numbers. Well, this is the moment, frankly, when black media, especially black owned media, should be reviving the Madison Avenue Project to begin to challenge the folks, because the issue is not just black folks working inside of these ad agencies. It's also that collective spend. I'm actually working with the lawyer who was on that Madison Avenue Project, which means that we must have a consortium of black media folks who are then using our power and our voices to be able to go after these companies. When I saw what happened when, what was going on with the spend when it came to the census, the deal was who controls the contract. And then what's been happening there? Use the voice to go after that very specific ad agency. And you damn right, that check came. The same thing, the political campaigns, not just Joe Biden campaign, but the question is DCCC, DSCC, DOCC, Democratic Governors Association, Priorities USA, American Bridge, Emily's List. Billions are going to be spent. Are we then also doing the demanding? Look at all the ad agencies. Are we going to them again with a consortium with a very specific ad saying we want 20% of all ad dollars going to black media? So I'm not interested. I'm not interested in relitigating white supremacy and white racism. I'm saying use this moment, this reckoning, to publicly challenge folk and say, if y'all don't spend, we're going to use our voices to call you out, which is what Robert Abbott did with Chicago Defender, A.I. Scott with the Atlanta Daily World, what black media always did. I think a lot of folks today, though, are scared to call some folks out. We might not get anything, but damn it, if you're getting zero right now, what the hell do you have to lose?
Hey, my dad used to always say in the Southern term, 0 from 0 is 0. If you got none and you leave with none, you didn't gain none. So, hey, Chesley, I want to pivot to you, because Roland just threw something on the table to talk about. We see all these companies, all these Fortune 500 companies that made all these press releases. We care about black folks. We hold in black folks' hands. Black Lives Matter all over the place. Have you seen this social unrest and all these statements turn to dollars for black media and for black owned media, or have they just been press statements so far, Chesley?
So it's a little early to tell, but I would say the early indications are there are some people who are going to be truer to their word than others. As Karen can tell you, NABOP has been working on those initiatives, and you'll see in our NABOP conference in October, it'll be a major focus.
Chesley, you should say what NABOP is for everybody that doesn't.
It's National Association of Black-Owned Broadcasters, and the NABOP conference will be NABOP, National Association of Black-Owned Broadcasters, and a conference called The Power of Urban Radio. And so we have worked very hard since June to track who has said what and what have they done. So this is only August, but so far we have seen the largest consumer packaged good company, Procter & Gamble, step up literally in June and say, from a corporate standpoint, we're going to focus advertising to Black people through Black-owned media and challenge other large advertisers to follow suit, which was a major initiative that I've never seen happen before.
Did Procter & Gamble announce that?
Clearly, we have a lot of work to do in that area. I was on the phone with an agency, Omar, yesterday, who has a multicultural initiative. And he said for the first time in all of his years in working on that, he has had advertisers ask the question, do we have a multicultural initiative? Now, his point was, however, that from an agency standpoint, which I'm so glad you're in the business, from an agency standpoint, they have to do education internally. My view is all the stats are there, right? So the education can happen in an instance because it's a question about the desire and the will to make a change. The stats are there. There is no statistic that will show that a major corporation should spend 98% of their dollars advertising to white Americans. No statistic, right? It's just
but that's not the block. That's not the block. See, the corporations can say that. Here's the block, which is where we have to be willing to go there. They are sending their money to the ad agency. Yeah. And what's happening is the ad agency is coming up with their own metrics where they are then determining that. So what happens is, so when you call, they go, what are your numbers? They've already have created a template that purposely locks us out. Yeah. What we have to do to
the company directly, not
right. We got to tell the company, hey,
absolutely,
they spending your money.
Hey, wait, to Roland and to Chesley, I want to go to Omar. Because are we letting ad agencies off the hook? I want to go to Omar. In 2020, should you really have to have training to learn that there's value for Black people? Omar.
Well, here's the thing. I think we all agree that there may be a conscious bias, but there are agencies that are specifically seeking out Black-owned company and Black-owned content. So there is money and there is initiative against this. Now, Roland made a good point earlier when he said there is strength if we do things collectively, meaning if we bring our scale and we bring our might and if we bring our voice, there's a greater opportunity to pull greater dollars out of there. But yes, there is, in 2020, there's still need for education. I mean, we're still fighting the same fight. So I think agencies are open. I think we're in a moment of time where, because of the murder of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and the other Black names of folks that have died, I think people are leaning in and they want to do their part socially. So as Black broadcasters, this is our opportunity to capture some of those dollars.
Let me just say this, and we got to be honest, folks. The only way these people are going to respond is with pressure. What they are doing is biding time. They are saying, how far away will we get from the death of George Floyd when things return to normal? If they don't feel the sustained pressure, meaning we are going to publish your numbers. We're going to broadcast your numbers. We're going to say you released a Black Lives Matter statement on your Instagram page, but you have no Black ad agencies. And this is your Black spin. Light can only reveal what is done in the dark. And if we don't do that, the money ain't coming.
And so I think it's important. I want to follow up with what Roland said quickly. We have to also, again, I keep talking about turning the mirror to ourselves. We just said a moment ago that it's conscious bias, but somehow we want to navigate around that when we get into this part of the discussion. If it's conscious bias, it's conscious bias, period. And that consciousness did not change on a whole with the death of George Floyd. So if we think that miraculously these companies and these leaders in those companies have changed their minds after decades of keeping us blocked, we would be foolish. We also need to make sure. I've dealt with Blacks in white agencies who ultimately had to send me to a 27-year-old white girl to determine how we should service our community. This young lady, other than eating in Harlem and knowing a Beyonce record, knew nothing about Black folks.
Yep.
These were the people who were making the determination of how much, if any, money we received. And the idea of the collective voice, finally, again, something Roland and I we've been talking about this again for years. We've been friends for years, have talked about this for years. I'm tired of us talking about us working as a collective, and then we go away and we never work as a collective.
Yep.
I hope that this reckoning period will allow us to finally see that we can become stronger together than apart.
Definitely. Deborah, you wanted to jump in there?
Yeah, I wanted a couple things that observation here. We've talked about, the media itself, and we've talked about media ownership. But I look at Omar, who owns an agency, and I'm wondering if we don't need more focus along those lines. We need more Black-owned advertising agencies who hopefully then can control some of those dollars or direct them, and recognize this a little bit more. And then the other thing I would just point out that also, like, this is an opportunity for advocate, you've accountability, that to continue to hold people accountable. If we just hold them accountable today, but forget about it next year, it's.
But Deborah, here's the deal. We got to just be honest on the whole deal with the ad agency. They are going extinct. I mean, the reality is, you look at the number there. Big why? It's because they are also being frozen out, not being in a position. It comes to a capacity issue, and then what happens is what used to be multicultural, where let's just call it what it is. The white ad agencies were like, all right, fine, y'all can handle multicultural. Okay, cool. So then you had Carol H. Williams, you had Burrell, you had Don Coleman, Uniworld, and there's several others. All of a sudden, when those numbers the demographics begin to change, multicultural became mainstream. So the white ad agencies were like, oh, damn this, we're going to keep it for ourselves. So what they've been doing is starving the Black ad agencies. And this is what I'm saying.
Right.
What we have to do, here's what we have. What we have are microphones, television, and we have digital. And what they don't like, I don't care what the company is, they do not like getting called out. And so what has happened is we have said, and I've been in Black media, well, no, we don't really want to push that thing because we getting some stuff right now. I've had people tell me the exact same thing, say, man, you really shouldn't be calling the campaigns out because that's going to affect the money we get. And I said, your ass getting small money right now. I said, at some point, you have got to let them know that I am going to put you on blast and put your information out if y'all don't want to play ball. Now, either you're gonna be scared or you're gonna be bold with it. And I know, because we've done it, the results are there because they don't want to get called out. I'm telling you, we are walking down a path where the Black ad agencies are going to be extinct if we are unwilling to use this moment to say, hey, we're not going to freeze out the dollars anymore.
Omar, Roland, I want to go to Omar on that point. And after we go to Omar, Roland, you raised a point about standing up and saying something. And Deon, I want to go to you about the lawsuit that you just filed as an owner soon as we get to Omar.
Right. Just one point. There are less Black agencies than there were 10 years ago. But the distinction I want to make is we run a Black-owned agency. However, we seek general market business. So I think it's important that we have Black folks in general market agencies in leadership positions. So yes, even if the Black agencies go away, we still need Black faces in general market agencies, making decisions, determining where dollars are allocated. And even we mentioned, someone mentioned the point of talking to a 32-year-old planner. We need to be at a point where we can influence the plan before the dollars are allocated. And we need Black folks in those agencies. So I think it's a nuanced conversation. It's a general market agency with Black folks in it versus Black agencies.
So can I ask you a question? What do we do to make that happen when we've been talking about that specific point for decades?
For decades.
I want to
Hey, Go ahead, Karen.
We need to be in the boardrooms. We need to influence decisions. We need seats, not just at reception, but throughout the company, including the boardroom. These companies have their demographics. They know who their consumers are, and they know how many African Americans, Hispanics, what have you, buy their products. They know how much we contribute to their bottom line. Why they don't support us. That is the issue that I have. It's good business to support all your consumer base.
But they don't care about good business.
Yeah. Roland, before you go there, I want to go to Deon, because Deon, I want you to talk about an owner where the money comes from that most lay people don't realize, for hedge funds and other stuff like that, and about discussions that are starting to happen that were never there before, and then lead into your lawsuit, please.
Yeah, so I believe everything runs back to the money. Roland mentioned it earlier. It's about having the green, okay? And what I'm seeing now in the money world is that not the private equity people, but the people or the companies or the hedge funds or the pension funds that the private equity people get their money from are saying, wait a minute, before the California Teachers Pension Fund gives you $100 million to invest, right, what are you doing for diversity? I'm not going to give you a dime until you show me what you're doing for diversity. I think that's an important part in getting attention for the cause, because it all leads back to the money. Not only that, banks that get money from Federal Reserves, there should be covenants or requirements. What are you doing for diversity? And there should be a ranking for private equity companies. There should be a ranking for banks to manage money. That way we get a shot at the table, and it starts with the money train, not the end result.
Let me give you this here. Martin Depp did a book called Operation Breadbasket. He was part of the project. Every single one of us, that's the playbook. King discussed it in his April 3rd, 1968 speech when he said, redistribute the pain. How they moved dollars, how they went after companies where they had them invest money in black banks, hire black contractors, hire black senior managers. Everything we're talking about literally was what Reverend Leon Sullivan gave to King with this idea. King took the idea with SCLC, Operation Breadbasket. So, but here's the piece. You have to have an entity, infrastructure, to actually execute that plan.
That's correct.
So when you talked about this whole deal with money, and when someone, I forgot, it was Chelsea, when she said, we got to have this, some board seats, whatever. And then when Karen said, in terms of they know their black numbers, of course they do, but they're not going to do it unless they're forced to. So you look at what's happened. The Associated Press just did a story that showed the top businesses in Massachusetts, the top public companies in Massachusetts, have no black board member. Which then means, I saw another story that listed the top 20 companies that had no black board member. The company that owns TJ Maxx has no black board member. So to Ed's point, where does news come in? Okay. Now all of a sudden, so imagine news at at Karen's station. Imagine at news at Chelsea. Imagine news at Deon. And then what I do. What we're doing is, let's say we collectively get the information, and when we put that information out to our listeners and our viewers, and we begin to say, hey, y'all are supporting a place that doesn't even have a black board member. Trust me, the company's going to hear that when the phone calls and the emails come in. Last point. With, again, money, a collective targeting of money. That has to be then replicated, not just with the public companies, but with the ad agencies, because if all of a sudden they see light being shown on them and exposing their numbers, they got two responses: say we're full of it and ignore us, or go, we better fix it. I think they're going to say the latter, but it will not happen unless we are using the voices to expose them. Money, they only respond to pressure. That's been the history of black people. That ain't changing in the next 20 years.
Yeah, Deon, I'll just add this. I agree 100% with Roland, 100%. Big companies only do things for two reasons: economics, what's in it for them, or who's going to make me do it. Okay, who's gonna make me do it? And if nobody makes them do it, or if they can't make a dollar, it's very difficult to get done. Case in point, Deon, you had mentioned my lawsuit. I just filed a lawsuit a week ago against AT&T, okay, for carriage in Indianapolis. And if you want details on the lawsuit, go to wishtv.com and you'll read about the lawsuit and you'll read about the challenges of being a Black owner of television stations in America. It's a pretty graphic lawsuit, and it explains the problems that I go to. I got to Randall Stevenson from AT&T. I got to him. I spoke to him via email. So when he came back, it was a conscious decision, not an unconscious decision, to not compensate McCoy's television station in Indianapolis. That's a problem. I reached out to him immediately after he sent out his white paper on Black America, and I'm for Black causes. I reached out and said, Mr. Stevenson, I'm a Black guy owning a TV station in Indianapolis. Can you help me? And if you can't help me, I'm going to have to sue you. He responded back, I'm not compensating you. We're not going to carry you. I said, okay, I'll sue you. So it is tough unless people make people do things. And for me, the only person that can make Randall Stevenson do something is the law.
Oh, wait, hold on, Deon. So you dropped the lawsuit last week. Okay. So from what is your Black media strategy? First, have you said, you know what, I need to get this to the NMPA papers? Two, I need to, are there any national radio show that you've been targeting? I got no problem putting you on my show because I ain't got to ask nobody. I can do it. Your lawsuit is only going to get attention, and the attention is going to get AT&T's attention. And so a lawsuit that's filed that no one knows about, that means that's not going to do it. So what is your Black media strategy to put this out to the public?
I'll call you after the show.
That's my point. Anything that we do when we are trying to do exactly what you're doing, there has to be a media component to it that shines light on it. Otherwise, the public will never know. They are afraid of the public being exposed to the truth, which is why, going back to Ed's point, if Black media doesn't have news, we have no outlets to tell our people about such lawsuits, because they're not going to talk about your lawsuit in between a Beyonce and a Jay-Z song.
So I just want to thank all y'all because
let me just say this very quickly. I think that what we're missing here is the templates, as Roland suggested with one of them, have been laid for us years ago.
Right.
We don't need to sit and come up with new plans. We watched Byron Allen fight all the way to the Supreme Court for 5 years. And there were a lot of Black people who snickered and laughed and all, but he understood, even though it didn't reach the outcome he wanted, he understood what needed to be done to bring to Roland's point, to bring the issue to light. And so when I keep saying, what are we going to do? I'm just exhausted with the same kinds of conversations I've been dealing with for decades now. You know, I don't even do town hall meetings anymore, because we leave those town hall meetings and all we did was spend 2 hours talking about the same things we talk about. Same thing we talk about, you know, the Congressional Black Caucus. We go each year. I say just rerun what we did last year. We have to now utilize this moment and use the plans that we know work and put them in action versus what we've been doing for too long. And that is griping and simply talking about them. We know corporations don't.
That's what I wanted to thank.
Actually, Byron got what he wanted. He ended up signing a deal with Comcast to settle the lawsuit.
Yeah.
So
he didn't get anything. He didn't get exactly, but absolutely.
Yeah, but I want to say this real quick. I want to thank all of y'all, because what we've done today, and I've known most of the people on this screen for years upon years upon years, and we've had all these discussions in different places together. But today, we let a lot of people who've never heard this discussion, because of the platform we're on now, hear a discussion that Ed has said has gone on with most of us on here for 2 and 3 decades. And this may be the first time they've ever heard this and heard it the way you all just laid it out. So, Deborah, I just wanted to say that.
Well, that is one of the things that we wanted to do. One of the, I think, the important things that we can do from where coming from a broadcast background and now in trade publication business is that we can bring some of these issues forward. Obviously, we don't have the answers. If we did, we'd all be, we'd all be utilizing them. We wouldn't have to be discussing it. But we need to find ways to move things forward and what kind of action. I'm hoping that we can keep these conversations going, quite frankly, because we need to be, the more we keep addressing things, and I know you've got to be very tired. Ed's mentioned it a number of times, so has Roland. After so long, you just get tired of talking about it. But if we're in a public forum and we get more people talking about it, maybe get more people demanding accountability, for these things, whether it's agencies, whether it's advertisers, whether they're in the boardroom, whether they're out in public media, whatever, we need to demand accountability. And that's what I'm hoping we can do.
Deon, you'll be on my show Friday.
I appreciate you, man.
I ain't got to ask nobody.
He's unbossed.
I would say all of you need to come to ABOB and the Power of Urban Radio.
Absolutely.
Hey, I got no problem, but understand, I'm gonna bring heat.
We're in the sauna. We're in the sauna. You don't need to bring any heat. We're in the sauna.
Right.
Oh, trust me, y'all in a sauna, baby. I'm from Texas. I bring heat.
Bring a towel.
I want to thank, somebody's already asking if we can have a part 2 to discuss ways to move forward. Perhaps we can reconvene again. I would love to see this group together again. I want to thank you for your time. We did not get to hardly any questions today, but the conversation, and from what I'm reading along the line in the chat, people are finding what you're saying both compelling and very helpful. I've seen more than one comment that they feel like they've learned a lot, and I think that's what's important. Deon, I want to thank you for co-hosting. I want to thank Ed Gordon and Roland Martin, Chesley Maddox Dorsey, Deon McCoy, Karen Slade, Omar Thompson, everybody behind the scenes. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. This will be replayed. You can pick it up on YouTube if you didn't get a chance to see the whole thing. And I also would hope that everybody that has been watching and everybody here, remember RBR.com and RadioInc.com. Please, we're always looking for your comments and other kinds of any information or ideas and suggestions so that we can do our part to make things a little bit better. And hopefully so that Ed Gordon one of these days can say, I'm not frustrated anymore. We have done something.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you again, Deon.
No, thank you. I thought that was, I knew that's what it would be. So
I thought they were all really, really good. We sort of threw the script out of the way, which I kind of had a feeling that might happen too, but I was certainly glad to see that, everybody was so engaged. So that was it really, really, I think we had a very good conversation.
Well, I got to the 2 questions from them and all 4 of our questions we started with. I just worried. I don't know if you noticed, I just weaved them in there as I transitioned people from one to another. So.
Okay. Well, listen, thanks a lot. And we will chat with you again. I have a feeling we might be doing this again.
Well, thank you. It was very enjoyable. And I thought it was very educational. I keep getting texts from people saying they couldn't stop looking. So. Great. Well, on behalf of everybody at RBR+TVBR, Adam Jacobson, our editor, and Radio Inc., Ed Bryan, who did all the production, thank you very much.